But today we've got a special discussion lined up for you with someone who understands the hospitality space very well, now on the board of OYO, but in his previous avatar has been with the aviation sector. So hospitality as a whole actually is his forte. And we've seen that because of this national crisis, or in fact the international crisis, a health crisis, COVID-19 pandemic is having direct impact on hospitality first. It's been at the front end of the receiving end, I would say. I'm talking about Mr. Aditya Ghosh, who is here with me on Skype, working from home, I'm assuming. Aditya, good afternoon. Thank you very much for chatting with us. We all know it's a global crisis we are facing. Talk to us about how your organization is coping up. I'm sure you are also working from home. I can see a amazing library, sort of a huge number of books lined up. Talk to us about how this new reality is for the company and for you as a professional.
I'm getting a lot of these, or all of us are getting a lot of these WhatsApp messages right now, right? That I hope you're safe and thinking of you, etc. I have to say, that I'm the only way that I'm replying is that we are far more fortunate than a lot of people who are impacted by this crisis. So, there is very little for us to complain. We've got food on our table and a roof above our heads and surrounded by our loved ones, and you don't need critical health care. That puts us in a pretty fortunate position. Of course, it's also meant that we've got to kind of deal with our work life and the way we run our businesses differently. But you can see that most businesses have been able to adapt pretty fast in the way they're being able to work. At OYO, for instance, we had announced the work from home almost 2 weeks ago, and it's just it's amazing how people and processes kind of come together and they start adapting very differently to the new reality that's out there. But as far as work from home is concerned, I'm actually not complaining. I'm actually quite enjoying. I'm actually finding I'm much more productive at home than kind of going back and forth through traffic. On a lighter note.
Right. Aditya, how deep is the damage? OYO, sitting on the board, you must be getting intelligence and inputs from across the world, not only taking or mapping how the company is likely to pan out going forward. Talk to us, how deep is the damage for hospitality? Even for other hoteliers, the ones we are speaking with are reporting 50 to 70% drop in occupancy. What's your assessment of the industry which you're representing?
Yeah, the way I kind of think about it is that there is not going to be a single industry which is not going to be impacted with what we are seeing today. And this is going to have far-reaching repercussions all around. The difference is that there will be some sectors which will go through a very deep, large, impact and shock in the immediate future. And there'll be others who will see a long, lingering impact for a long period of time, because this is an unprecedented crisis. As far as the hospitality sector is concerned, or for that matter, the travel business is concerned, clearly because of the lockdown and the travel restrictions, people are just not flying, and therefore people are not checking in. In the hotels business, in the more affordable category, you're still finding people, using these facilities, especially, for example, in OYO, people who have been caught in a different city than where they were, or they have been told by their landlords or owners of paying guest accommodations to leave. They're moving to OYO facilities. We are also actually using a lot of our facilities to provide support to first responders and medical and healthcare facilities, both in India as well as the United States, in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia and Malaysia. So we're playing an active role there. 50-60% drop in occupancy is not a surprising thing at all. But I do also feel that over a longer period of time, those segments of the market or those segments of the industry which depend a lot on high spenders or a lot of discretionary spending, they will see deeper, longer term impact. And like we have seen in the wake of the 2009-10 crisis, or in the wake of the SARS crisis, I think the affordable end of the marketplace, whether it be travel, hospitality, or manufacturing, or anywhere, you will see them kind of seeing a recovery earlier than those depending on the higher end of the segment.
Right. Aditya, still, since we are having this discussion, I must take your opinion on how badly bruised is the aviation industry. People are already writing obituary of, that sector. Globally, we are already talking about some of the airlines going bankrupt and requiring bailout from the governments. You've been for such a long time in that industry. I don't want a stock or company specific reaction, but we know the names in a country. But how bad is the situation there?
Look, again, Jay, right now globally, the airlines have gone into just a seizure mode because there is just no traffic. But that's because, not because traffic has disappeared, but that's because there has been a lockdown and there is a restriction from planes flying, which basically tells me two things. Like in the past, again, those businesses or those airlines which have a strong balance sheet and are able to run a more efficient cost structure, you will see them being able to provide the seats or their services at a much lower cost and affordable end of the market than what some of the competitors will be able to do. So, that's one. The second is that I do see that international travel will take much longer to recover than domestic. The third thing that I see is that as a result of that, large network carriers who do not have an implicit domestic feed, they will suffer much more than large domestic airlines in emerging or busy markets like India or the United States, or for that matter, network carriers who have built their network on the foundation of very strong domestic feed, and so that's how I kind of see this happening.
So you think Indian private carriers will rebound once this, we are out of the woods? Do you think they will rebound in a more financially healthy manner?
Certainly, some of them will, Ajay, because you see, the people will still need to travel. But I do expect that people will want to spend less on their travel than they used to do in the past. The second is, therefore, whoever is able to afford, provide the seat on a more affordable price point will win. The third is, therefore, those who have been selling at a much higher cost to the consumer will have no choice but to match. And they will go through a much bigger cash burn and crash crunch. Now, the airline business also is a business where there is a large, variable cost, and to a limited extent, a fixed cost, depending on how the cost structure of the airline is built. So therefore, it also provides some immediate opportunities for an airline to rejig its cost structure or rejig its operations so that it can control its variable cost to some extent. And finally, the way the fuel price has behaved, and even traditionally there has been a natural hedge between the fuel price and the US dollar Indian rupee exchange rate. The way the fuel prices behave, any business which is a large amount of its cost structure denominated with the fuel price will see some, at least, of course, temporary relief for the foreseeable future.
Right. Aditya, what kind of data are you getting of the situation on ground from your international network, be it US, be it China? How are things panning out there on ground? And I believe that Ivanka Trump recently tweeted about how OYO is offering help to the system. Here in India as well, you have offered help to the system for quarantine facility they've required. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so look, our first effort, like I think most responsible corporate citizens, was to make sure that our employees are safe. So that was clearly, priority number one. And very close to that was to make sure that our in-house guests who are already with us, the consumers who are already with us, that they are safe. So I think we've done a reasonably good job there. Then because of that capacity that we have, and especially a company like OYO, where we are in hundreds of cities around the world, almost more than almost any other branded hotel chain in the world, we're able to provide and offer these facilities almost in any city, any large or medium-sized city in any of the markets that we operate in. So we've offered these facilities as quarantine facilities. We've offered these facilities as isolation facilities. We've offered these facilities also for first responders and police officials and other civil services to come and just rest, because they're not going to be able to go back home without public transport. So, this was called out by Ivanka Trump. It was called out by the Vice President of the United States, called out by the Chief Minister of Delhi and many other political leaders. And we are very, very grateful for that. But we're just doing, I think, what is the right thing to do. As far as our own business, and because of our global presence, we see various trends around the world. And China, of course, is the largest market for OYO. And we've been seeing this sort of play out for longer than a lot of other companies out of India. And you can see that even on the ground level, things are kind of getting back to what's maybe termed normal to some extent in a place like China. But this is my personal view. That doesn't mean that this problem is, we are seeing the end of the problem. It doesn't mean that the disease is spreading any less. It doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. But it just also means that there are certain green shoots of recovery, and there are certain opportunities that will arise out of here. But in a country like India, I think there's just a lot more that we have to do over the next several weeks to make sure that we are able to contain this presence of the disease before even we talk about recovery and so on and so forth. Sorry, Ajay, your voice broke up.